Hey everybody, Professor Moore here. So recently a lot of people have been talking about the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And I've been seeing a lot of comparisons of this moment in time to the French Revolution, when the people rose up and chopped the heads off of the rich and powerful in the guillotine. And I don't disagree with this analysis. I believe that the United States is in the beginning stages of a revolutionary upheaval, and who knows where it will end. If we listen to the grievances of French revolutionaries in the 1700s, we'll see that they sound very familiar to our current situation in America today. For example, in 1792, a former Catholic priest named Jacques Roux joined a radical political group called the Enraged Ones, and in a pamphlet he wrote, "Freedom is but an empty phantom if one class of men can starve another with impunity. Freedom is but an empty phantom when the rich man can, through his monopoly, exercise the right of life and death over his fellow men." Isn't this exactly the kind of power that the CEOs of healthcare companies have over us? The power of life and death? The power to decide who gets treatment and who doesn't? French revolutionaries like Jacques Roux were tired of empty words, so they decided to act. And it was Jacques Roux who led the French king Louis XVI to the guillotine to be executed in 1793. Another French revolutionary was a man called Gracchus Babeuf, who was part of a group called the Conspiracy of Equals. During the French Revolution, he wrote, "Cut without pity the throat of the tyrants, the patricians, the gilded million, all the immoral beings who might oppose our common happiness." What could be more opposed to our common happiness than those who make sure that all Americans don't have access to or can afford health care? Who fits the definition of immoral beings more than billionaires who live in obscene wealth and luxury while millions of Americans can barely afford to rent a box to live in? There is no denying that America's CEOs and billionaires are the equivalent and the direct descendants of the old French nobility and aristocrats who were targeted during the Revolution. When the Queen Marie Antoinette was told that the French people could not afford bread, a story spread that she callously and stupidly responded, "Let them eat cake." Today, when many Americans are struggling to afford groceries and put food on the table, people like Kellogg's CEO Gary Pilnick tell us, "Let them eat cereal." The lesson of the French Revolution is that there is only so much abuse that the people can take before they rise up and attack those condemning them to a life of misery and suffering. And it's really astounding that there are some people who cannot understand this. Yesterday, an op-ed was published in USA Today titled, "No one should celebrate United Healthcare CEO's murder. Where's our humanity?" The author, Ingrid Jacques, wrote that the shooting of this CEO should have elicited empathy from the public, and she was horrified to see people celebrating this death online. She said, "The callous disregard for a human life is alarming to witness." Are you serious? What planet do you live on? Have we not watched our government fund a genocide for over a year? She says, "Where's our humanity? Where's the humanity of our government?" Why doesn't she ask where's the humanity of CEOs who make billions of dollars by depriving people of life-saving health care? She says that our reaction to this death is a callous disregard for human life. Seriously? What about the disregard for human life built into a system that denies people their basic needs and pushes people into bankruptcy for trying to get the healthcare they need? The ruling class always wants us to weep and mourn over the death of individuals from their ranks, but they have no tears for the suffering of the working class. Mark Twain had the perfect response to those who condemn the violence of the French Revolution, but remain silent on the violence inflicted by the rich on the poor. He wrote, "There were two reigns of terror, if we would but remember it and consider it. The one wrought murder in hot passion, the other in heartless cold blood. The one lasted mere months, the other had lasted 1,000 years. The one inflicted death upon 10,000 persons, the other upon 100 millions. But our shudders are all for the horrors of the minor terror, the momentary terror, so to speak. Whereas, what is the horror of swift death by the axe compared with lifelong death from hunger, cold, insult, cruelty, and heartbreak? What is swift death by lightning compared with death by slow fire at the stake? A city cemetery could contain the coffins filled by that brief terror, which we have all been so diligently taught to shiver at and mourn over. But all France could hardly contain the coffins filled by that older and real terror. The unspeakably bitter and awful terror, which none of us has been taught to see in its vastness or pity as it deserves. The anarchist Emma Goldman also had a perfect response to those who would ask us to mourn the death of a billionaire who represents a system that denies us our basic humanity. After U.S. President William McKinley was assassinated by an anarchist in 1901, Emma Goldman wrote a controversial article defending this action, arguing that it was a natural response to a society built on exploitation and inequality. She wrote, "For more than 30 years, a small band of parasites have robbed the American people and trampled upon the fundamental principles laid down by the forefathers of this country, guaranteeing to every man, woman, and child life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For 30 years, they have been increasing their wealth and power at the expense of the vast mass of workers, thereby enlarging the army of the unemployed, the hungry, homeless, and friendless portion of humanity, tramping the country from east to west and north to south in a vain search for work. For many years, the home has been left to the care of the little ones, while the parents are working their life and strength away for a small pittance. For 30 years, the sturdy sons of America were sacrificed on the battlefield of industrial war, and the daughters outraged in corrupt factory surroundings. For long and weary years, this process of undermining the nation's health, vigor, and pride, without much protest from the disinherited and oppressed, has been going on. Maddened by success and victory, the money powers of this free land of ours became more and more audacious in their heartless, cruel efforts to compete with the rotten and decayed European tyrannies in supremacy and power. But this act was mad and cowardly, says the ruling class. It was foolish and impractical, echo all petty reformers. What absurdity! Perhaps the assassin learned that it is nonsense to talk of equality between those who have all and those who have nothing. Hence, he rebelled. Resistance against force is a fact all through nature. Man being part of nature, he too is swayed by the same force to defend himself against invasion. Force will continue to be a natural factor just so long as economic slavery, social superiority, inequality, exploitation, and war continue to destroy all that is good and noble in man. It is, therefore, not cruelty or a thirst for blood or any other criminal tendency that induces such a man to strike a blow at organized power. On the contrary, it is mostly because of a strong social instinct, because of an abundance of love and an overflow of sympathy with the pain and sorrow around us, a love which seeks refuge in the embrace of mankind, a love so strong that it shrinks before no consequence. A love so broad that it can never be wrapped up in one object, as long as thousands perish. A love so all-absorbing that it can neither calculate, reason, investigate, but only dare at all cost. My heart goes out to him in deep sympathy, and to all the victims of a system of inequality, and the many who will die the forerunners of a better, nobler, grander life.